Seeing the guys that were doing that after it was over in Lakewood.
Rebecca, did you send the second one to Lisa Breeden?
I did.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rockland Public Schools School Committee meeting of Monday, November 28th, 2022. First on this evening's agenda, as always, is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up on tonight's agenda is acceptance of minutes. We'll be entertaining a motion to approve the meeting minutes of November 14th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Seeing nothing under audience, we'll move on to reports. We'll need to approve 4 sets of financial reports for the month of October. Reports for the school department, for Rockland High School student activities, Rogers Middle School student activities, and cafeteria. We'll be entertaining 4 motions.
4 motions to approve.
And we'll be looking for 4 seconds.
4 seconds.
Thank you. All in favor? As a vote. For your information, for a vote, we have monthly reports for the month of September and October. We will be entertaining 18 motions for approval. We'll be approving reports for Art Department, Athletic, Computer Technology, Dean, English 9 to 12, Foreign Language, Library, Math 9 to 12, Middle School, Mrs. Harris, Middle School, Mr. Griffin, Phys Ed, Consumer Science, Music, Radio, TV, Science, Social Studies, Daycare, and finally, Special Education. We'll be entertaining 18 motions.
18 motions to approve.
And we're looking for 18 seconds.
18 seconds.
Thank you. All those in favor? That is a vote. Next up, under item 5, which is old business, we have a Phelps Elementary School update. Mrs. Davidson.
Yes. So we had our meeting that is recorded on WRPS and can be played back. Just some updates. The furniture is basically all installed or in there and getting worked on. Landscaping in the playground is also being worked on. I'm sure when you drive by, you can see it coming together and it looks beautiful. They're working on the final cleaning still and the punch list items. And just a reminder that the budget for the project was $86.6 million and they've used they're in the budgeted to use $71.8 million. That's all I have.
Thank you. That's outstanding. It's great. Thank you for including that point. I know Rockland has a wonderful record of coming in on time and under budget for the buildings that we've done in our schools. That was the case for the middle and high school project and seems to be the case going forward with the Phelps Elementary School project. It's outstanding, especially considering the quality of facilities that we're seeing going up over there. Dr. Cron, do you have anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add.
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Mrs. Davidson. Next up, under old business, we have a financial update. Ms. Hackett? Or Dr. Cron?
Thank you. This will just be very brief. Dr. Cron and I were able to meet last week with Town Hall, with Doug Lapp, Jen, the Assistant Town Manager, Constable, and Scott Curtis, the new Town Accountant, with whom we are very much enjoying working. And up here is just a brief outline of what we discussed. A follow-up on the most significant item was the security for the vestibules, which we had gone out for professional pricing. Dr. Cron and I went in front of the selectmen a few months ago and were able to secure up to $500,000 of ARPA money for this project. The pricing has come back in at $461. So we're preparing to go out to bid very shortly on this project. The Genetech upgrade, we've gone over this a few times, all of this is new to you, but it's just, none of this is new to you, just a refresher of having met with Doug, Mr. Lapp, going forward. The real key here are the totals. Now that some pricing has come in, we've spoken about the Eston School ventilation grant that we've received for $422,000. We received that grant because of our high needs population percentage. It is at 63, up from 45 from last year, which made this an entitlement grant. We did not have to apply. It was non-competitive in receiving this amount of money to work on the ventilation system at the Eston School. But we were able to speak about all these individual items and prepare for the spring for the free cash at the town meeting with the total amount, in addition to our 100,000 that we generally ask for and receive, is $487,000 for this upcoming year for free cash for Town Hall. And we're able to go over the details of all of this, provide backup. I just have to say that Mr. Wells and Mr. Shum have just done a remarkable job over the course of the last 3 to 4 months on all of these projects in getting prices and quotes. So we're able to give the town everything that they need to be able to price this out and plan appropriately. And we'll have to go in front of the finance committee, et cetera, fill out the capital forms, but nothing should be a surprise. There's, full monthly communication with Town Hall. And although the numbers seem high, when you break it down, it's really not. And I think of significant note is that our total investment for infrastructure for security in this fiscal year is $756,000 that we're making into security, into our buildings.
That's great. Any comments, questions?
Do you know when you'll be receiving the ventilation quote back?
Good question. What we have to do is we have to do a feasibility study. So they're doing their walkthrough this week
Okay.
of the Eston School, and then they're going to tell us what we need. We don't know what we need. These are HVAC specialists who are going to come, and they're going to tell us what we need. It's not a drawdown grant, which is how we generally receive federal grants. This is, we have to apply for each phase up to a total amount of $422,000. And we have to follow federal procurement laws, which are very different than state procurement laws. And Mr. Lapp's helping us a lot with that, as is our legal counsel, to make sure that every step of the way we're following and checking the correct boxes. So we had to apply for $6,000 for the feasibility study. And then once we receive the feasibility study, we apply for the construction component. So they approve it at every step as opposed to just allocating and letting you draw down.
Is there, excuse me, is there specific sort of requirements and thresholds that the ventilation system needs to be met for being in a school or an early childhood center? Is this what
Yes.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yes.
Great. And then I think last meeting we talked a little bit about the playground, and I know there was a lot of moving parts with that, and has there been any sort of progress moving forward with that?
It's one of the most complicated procurement processes I've ever seen in working, because you're supposed to compare apples to apples, but Frank over here is selling this, and Sam is selling this, which has one extra swing. So are they apples to apples or not? So Doug and I actually met on that last week, and he gave me some additional information on the procurement and maybe some exceptions that we may be able to apply for. So I'm confident we're going to be able to receive it, and he's committed to attempting to fund it. The key thing is that we want to make sure it's beautiful and that it's functional and we're working with our OT and PT folks to make sure it's accessible, it's age appropriate, we have the appropriate high quality surface, that we're not just doing mulch on top of with little mats, we're doing appropriate matting and appropriate equipment for the kiddos at the early childhood center at Eston.
Excellent.
Jane said a lot of things. I think what I really want is, I want the public to see the $422,710. That's a grant that Jane tracked down. So she brought in, nearly $500,000 that helps us with our operating budget, and I just want to thank Jane for that work.
I would agree. Thank you, Jane. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to new business, we have some fundraisers for approval. As a matter of fact, more specifically, we have 2 fundraisers for approval. The Jefferson School PAC is looking for approval on 2 fundraisers. They're going to be doing a Players Dining for a Cause on December 14th, 2022. Sounds good to me. Also, the PAC is going to be doing a Singo holiday treat on December 12th. Anybody know what Singo is?
It's bingo, but with songs.
Oh, Singo, okay.
Come on.
That makes sense. All right.
Tricky.
Sounds good to me. We're looking to get 2 motions for approval.
2 motions to approve.
And 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
All those in favor? It's a vote. Thanks very much. Moving on, item B, under new business, MCAS assessment. Dr. Cron.
I'm going to invite Rebecca Kidwell to the podium.
Welcome, Ms. Kidwell.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Great. All right, so I'm here with you this evening just to go over the MCAS Achievement, Growth, and Accountability information that might be pertinent from the 2022 tests last spring. This first slide is just a quick review of what MCAS is. It's tests in English Language Arts, or ELA, mathematics, and science. It's every year in grades 3 through 8 for ELA and math. It's in grades 5 and 8 for science, and then you take 1 in each subject in high school, mostly in 10th grade. It's for all students, including our English learners, including our special education students, and scores fall into 4 categories. If you haven't been paying much attention to MCAS in the pandemic times, which would be quite understandable, the categories used to be called different things. This is the next generation MCAS that comes with more colors and fancy words. There's some fine print down there at the bottom about a few kids who are exempt. For example, a student who has recently come here as an English learner isn't required to take the ELA test because they don't have enough English for that to be an appropriate test. And there is an exemption for some special education students who would not be able to access the regular test. That's an extremely small population of RPS students, like well less than 1%. It is the rare learner who takes that route instead. MCAS Growth is another set of numbers that we like to look at and that we're going to take a look at tonight. Students in grades 4 through high school earn a student growth percentile each year for their growth in ELA and mathematics. No student growth percentile or SGP for science because you don't take it every year. The SGP is a percentile out of 100 when compared with the growth of similarly achieving peers from previous years. So here's the part you actually need to know. We want a number between 40 and 60. Anything over 60 is really great. Anything between 40 and 60 is pretty good, and obviously the 50 to 60 side is better than the 40 to 50 side. Anything below 40 would be concerning. The way you can think about SGP is if we had 100 students in a line, and I didn't want to make 100 stick figures because that would have been like the whole day. So take my 5 as representative here. The student in the middle is learning at the absolute average rate for everyone in that group. And the student in spot 100 is learning at a higher or faster rate than all the other kids in the group. And they make the group based on prior MCAS scores of the individual learner. So my group might be different from Jane's group, might be different from Alan's group. Okay? All right. And the next set of numbers that we talk about usually is accountability. And there are a few different ways to look at accountability. One is through individual scores. And I just gave you the ranges here of what the categories are usually considered. Another aspect of accountability is that students are required to meet the competency determination cutoff score set by the state legislature on their high school tests in order to earn their diplomas. And then RPS gets an accountability determination from the state based upon a really complex formula that includes MCAS scores, Access English Learner test scores, test participation rates, attendance dropout rate, advanced coursework rate, like how many kids take AP, and graduation rate. And at least 95% of the students in each grade level, school, and subgroup, et cetera, must attempt the MCAS test. Okay, so that's the basics, if you needed the quick refresher. And now let's take a look at the 2022 data. Okay, this stacking chart is our ELA data. From the left, grade 3, all the way to the right, grade 10. The blue category at the top is the percent of students who earned exceeding expectations. The green category is the percent of students meeting expectations. Yellow is partially meeting expectations, and red is not meeting expectations. I know it looks like there's a fair amount of red and a fair amount of yellow. the rest of the presentation, we'll talk about some ways that we're working through that for the students who need it right now. In grades 3 through 8, there's a degree to which these tests are just a practice, a where you are right now. It's high school where they get a little higher stakes. We try to keep it as low stakes as possible for students in grades 3 through 8. Nobody needs to feel like they're taking a test their life depends on when they're 8 years old. So we're aware of some areas where we could improve. And that being said, the next generation MCAS is a difficult test. And we're proud of the parts that are blue and green on the graph here. One thing we're really proud of is the next slide. This is our student growth percentile, our average student growth percentile for each grade. And so you can see that our grade 4 ELA, the average SGP, is 60. That's the average of all the students in the district. They are growing at a faster, better, learning at a faster rate than many of their similar peers, even as we come out of the pandemic, which I think really speaks to some of the things that we've talked about over the past year about successful choices that we made in what programming looked like during the pandemic. And it also, I think, speaks to updates that we're making in curriculum and in professional development through the additional half days in the calendar. If you look carefully, you'll see that none of those are below 40. All of them are comfortably in the 40 to 60 range, which means all of our students are growing similarly or better than peers that have a similar assessment passed. Here are numbers for math. You can see the same blue at the top for exceeding expectations, green for meeting expectations, yellow for partially meeting expectations, and red for not meeting expectations yet. Of this graph, the number that concerned us most was the column all the way to the right, grade 10 math. We found that students in our high school grade, when they took MCAS last year, even though their achievement in most cases will be sufficient for them to work towards a diploma comfortably, it wasn't sufficient for what we hoped they would score. So we've put in place one example, I think you've heard about it already this year, of the math acceleration program at the high school. I think Dr. Harrison might have been here to talk with you about that. Mm-hmm. So that's one example of a time that we looked at the scores and we said, oh, okay, this is what we need, this is how we're gonna work towards addressing that. So again, there are some areas that are yellow that in the younger grades we really consider to be a not yet. Another area with a lot of yellow is grade 5 math. They had the challenge of, our grade 5 is in the middle school, and so they have the 52-minute class or whatever it is, as opposed to the elementary day, which can have some more flexibility. In the elementary day, the students tend to have closer to 80 or 90 minutes of math every day. So suddenly in 5th grade, we're using the same program, pre-K to 5, and it's an 80 to 90 minute a day program. But in order for the kids to have a true middle school experience that includes art or band or PE or all, science and social studies, all these other things, it's not viable for us to say, and also 90 minutes of math, please. So the 5th grade team had some difficulty implementing that curriculum successfully last year. This year, they're working with a consultant who professionally has worked with 5th grade teams in the middle school model to implement this research-based curriculum that really goes to why our 4th grade growth is so high. This is the 4th grade math growth. And again, you can see they're even above 60%, which means they are growing well above average for comparison to their similar peers in the past. We're attributing a lot of that to the curriculum that we've adopted for mathematics, Bridges, which I think Tim McAndrew and others have probably been here to talk with you about. And we're hoping that by bolstering that use of that in grade 5, we will see an improvement in grade 5 scores this year. So again, there's some more diversity in where these columns fall, but everybody's above 40, and we're really happy to see that with median growth. It can be very hard to make solid growth still at the high school level, because a lot of the time kids are starting to, kind of level out. They're reaching sort of the limit of growth that they're willing to do, that they're going to do. And our kids are still doing well, and we're pleased to see that. So this slide I've included because I think you're well aware, and Ms. Hackett acknowledged it as she was talking about our increase in high needs students and economically disadvantaged students that would lead to us being eligible for additional state funding for a project like the ventilation. This graph shows 2013 all the way to the left, and the end of last school year all the way to the right. So I didn't go into this school year at all. And you've got 5 lines here of selected populations and their percentage of the district population. The red line at the bottom is the percentage of English learners in the district, and you can see that increasing over the last 10 years significantly. The blue line is the percentage of students whose first language is not English. So these could either be students who came to us and already spoke enough English that they did not enroll in our EL program, or students who successfully completed our EL program. But the language that's still spoken in their home, the language that they first learned to speak, is something other than English. The yellow line is our students with disabilities. There's a statistical blip in the middle there, but you can see otherwise that line remains relatively consistent, under 20%, which is where we'd like to see it. That matches where most other districts in the state are. It fits the population that we'd expect to have. If we saw a dramatic change in that line over time, that would worry us, so the fact that it's consistent is good.
Just
The
a
orange,
question.
yep,
Sorry to interrupt.
that's okay.
So the thing that's striking to me a little bit is how challenging it must be to sort of judge year to year or judge students based upon a previous year, 5th graders, for example.
Yes.
Test scores 3 to 5 years ago, maybe.
Which is
And-
why I am not even trying to show you that with the pandemic in the middle.
Well,
Yep.
I'm, I just think about trying to remember back to my days in learning scientific method and testing. And it seems to me that there are a lot of factors that are different. First of all, the test is different. I mean, I don't know how many versions of the test has been given over the last 10 or so years, but now we've got next generation MCAS. We've obviously just gone through sort of, hopefully a once in our lifetime event of COVID, and every kid at where they were and where they went through, and what grade they were in when that happened, that certainly affects them based upon judging them by peers from a different year. And certainly this is a huge factor. I mean, sort of the students that we're seeing in the walls of this school right now in 2022 is a much more diverse and economically diverse group of kids. So I imagine it must be really challenging to actually read through this data and actually with sort of any sort of accuracy be able to judge students in 2022 against students from previous years.
Right. So we look at it, we look at the data lots of different ways, and I figured you wanted to go home at some point tonight, so I'm not going to show you all the different ways, but
Yeah.
for example, we look at a cohort over time. So we look at what last year's 3rd graders did, we'll see what they do as 4th graders and what they do as 5th graders. And one reason that's important is we have a pretty small district. So you want to compare a cohort, their own progress as they progress through the grades. We also want to look at a 4th grade against the next year's 4th grade when it's comparable. And you're absolutely right. It just hasn't been comparable the last few years. Even the 2021 MCAS was a modified version. So if you go on the state website, you'll see our 2022 scores compared to our 2019 scores. It's not exactly the same test. It's certainly not the same kids or the same world or the
Right.
same curriculum. Like there's just 1,000. So you can look at the numbers, and the state's talking point is scores have gone down since 2019. And my talking point for Rockland would be, yes, our scores are a little lower than they were in 2019, but they didn't go down as much as a lot of other people's, and our kids are still growing. And it's because of the things that our teachers are doing in the classroom.
And what year did it change to digital?
Yeah, so
Was it
it's
20?
been slowly changing over time, depending on the grade the students are in.
Yeah.
So the science hasn't even quite all the way made it yet.
Okay.
So it's over the last 10 years, Mr. Biggins is absolutely right. It's been slightly different year over year. And then even then, they'll make a change, like saying, oh, we're going to digital, and then they'll realize that the equation editor that allowed you to put in mathematical symbols wasn't very user-friendly for the 8-year-olds. So the equation editor will be different the next year. So you want to compare the scores, but
You really can't.
you really can't. So the best we can do is analyze what we get with the kids who are in front of us when we see that data. So the last 2 lines on the graph, the orange line, second from the top, is the economically disadvantaged population, and the green line is the high needs population, which you would think it was just adding up the 4 categories below it, but a student could be an English learner with disabilities, or an economically disadvantaged student who's also first language not English. So it's not a strict add of that stack, but the green line is our percentage of high needs students, and as Ms. Hackett pointed out, this graph stops just below 60, where we were last year, and we've crossed 60 as far as the percentage of students in the district who are considered high needs. The little blue stars are just so that you don't think we had like an amazing economic year that year. They just changed the formula. And so everybody in the state dipped off for a year, but you can see we have come right back, so.
Can I ask, what
Yeah.
is the definition of economically disadvantaged?
Yeah, so the change in, the original definition related to how many families applied for free or reduced lunch, and the state felt it gave an inaccurate representation because older students were less likely to bring in the application, less likely to bring the application home, less likely to be willing to take advantage of the program even if their family needed it. So now economically disadvantaged includes anyone who, it can include people who qualify for free or reduced lunch, but it can also include people who qualify for other state benefits like SNAP or WIC or anything like that, and the state databases are doing a better job of talking to each other. So sometimes we know who the economically disadvantaged students are because they applied for benefits through us, but sometimes the state knows, and we don't even realize that was the case until data comes from them saying, oh, this is your percentage now, and we're like, oh, geez, okay. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. All right, so the impact of curriculum on growth and achievement. In English Language Arts, we've put some serious investment into early literacy training for all teachers. This was the Keys to Literacy program that I believe you've heard about previously. And structured literacy lessons based in the science of reading. This is phonics. If you've got little kids, you've seen the foundations stuff, all that kind of thing. We're currently involved in a review of best pedagogy practices and curriculum materials in writing. So we have a program that we like, but we're taking a look, as we should, every few years to make sure we've got the best thing out there. And we're balancing that desire to have the best thing against the fiscal toll that it could take to make that move. So there's a team of teachers who, led by our literacy coaches, are working on that right now. In mathematics, we recently moved to the Bridges program for pre-K to 5. Pre-K adopted it as well, which is really exciting as we move to the Eston Early Childhood Center, that they really, pre-K and K are really getting to be a team in curriculum areas. We also have a data system called Forefront that helps teachers pinpoint students' strengths and needs related to the state standards. So this is the students don't interact with this at all, but after the students take an assessment, the teacher enters the assessment results, and the data system does the analysis for the teacher. So instead of the teacher having to be like, I feel like a lot of people missed number 3, and go through and like mark who missed number 3 and then figure out what was their mistake on number 3. The data system does some of that crunching for them so that the teacher can better design lessons for where the student's needs might lie. And then we talked about math acceleration towards graduation as well, that's something we're focusing on at the secondary level. In science, technology, and engineering, the high school performance, I know I didn't show you a graph for that because of things to try to graph science, technology, and engineering. There are 3 different tests that kids could take. They can take it in 9th grade or 10th grade. It was paper, then it was computer, it was old gen, then it was next gen. The score was 87, and then it was 452. Like, it was not going to be a good graph. So what I'll tell you about it is our high school scores tend to be stronger than our 5th grade and 8th grade scores. And one reason for that is the high school score is based on one course, whereas the 5th grade and 8th grade scores are technically based on 3rd through 5th grade science and 6th through 8th grade science on one test. And that's a lot to ask of little people who are, 10 and 13, 14. Do you remember what you were doing 2 years ago in school, kids? During the pandemic, we're gonna test you on that science now. So we are taking a look at our elementary and middle school curriculum, scope, and sequence, and looking at ways that we can do some spiral review of topics so that it's not, oh, you don't remember that from September of 3rd grade because it's on your June MCAS in 5th grade now. That there's a little more, we taught it and we came back to it, and we taught it and we came back to it, and we taught it and we came back to it. So that there are just opportunities for exposure along the way to keep it fresh in kids' heads. The science test being only every 3 years is a federal requirement, and it's something that most districts struggle with. So we're hoping this will be one way to combat it. Staffing and schedule impact on growth and achievement. In English Language Arts, we really love to see the WIN block, which stands for What I Need at the elementary level, and the Bulldog blocks at the middle school level. The grade 5 humanities class, which is their social studies, has taken on a lot of reading standards to make sure that they're preparing kids to read nonfiction text and write in response to text on the ELA MCAS. The middle school and the high school have both undertaken some of this math acceleration work. The middle school had a great summer program shoring up math skills for students that they identified. And then in science, technology, and engineering, we focused our coaching resources the last 2 years at the elementary level, and we're currently reviewing and refining high school course options to make sure that that 1-year course that kids have in high school is preparing them best for the test they're going to take. For accountability, I'm not going to read this whole slide, but if you are watching at home and you have a high school student, you can see the competency determination that they're required to meet. That number is below the green area. So if you were looking at that high school yellow section and thinking, oh no, we can't have that many kids not graduate because of MCAS, you can score in that section because the state realizes how much more challenging they made the next generation test. They want to have the cachet and the professionalism of a test-based competency determination. They want to use a test that's widely regarded as one of the best and one of the hardest in the nation because every state gets to set their own. But they don't want a graduation rate of 15%. So they've made this interim workaround a progressive increase. Also related to accountability, even though the yellow area is actually an okay place for our high school kids to end up, we want to see them end up in the green and the blue because that can make them eligible for the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, the Stanley Z. Koplik Certificate of Mastery, and potentially can be their English venue to earning the Seal of Biliteracy, where they take a test in another language as well and show that they are also literate in Spanish, French, Portuguese, whatever other language they choose. The Seal of Biliteracy can actually be a vehicle to earning college credits. Some colleges will award you credit if you have that seal on your diploma. And the Adams Scholarship and the Koplik Certificate of Mastery can cover tuition at state schools. The Adams is for specifically the top 25%, but the Koplik is open to everyone and can cover a semester of tuition immediately after exiting college at any of the state schools, which is pretty cool. RPS participation rates are already 98% or higher. We have achievement gaps between high needs and non-high needs students, and that changing population is an area where we continue to focus resources. Calculated state accountability determinations are slated to resume for next fall. So right now, if you go online, we technically have no accountability determination, as does almost every other district in the state. It's because even the state recognizes you can't make a graph out of these numbers right now. So they say that we're going to be able to do that next fall. I'll be back to tell you if we did, I hope. All right, so conclusions. We're going to focus on elementary writing, middle school science, and high school math this year. RPS students continue to grow at rates near or above other students with similar assessment backgrounds. RPS's high needs population has grown substantially over the past 10 years and even more rapidly over the most recent 3 years. Our best tools for improving MCAS achievement and growth are curriculum and professional development / staffing. And strong MCAS scores earn students diplomas, can pave the way for better college access, and keep our district fully funded without burdensome regulatory requirements. That's our goal. I'd be happy to take any other questions if you have them.
Any other questions, my colleagues?
I'll just
Dr.
ask
Small.
about, my understanding from having a now sixth grader before the fifth grade MCAS was that really in the elementary school, they weren't getting a strong science education at all, but that is changing.
That has changed substantially thanks to my predecessor, Colleen Forlisi, tasked Lisa Ryan, the instructional technology coach, with putting together some science lessons that are really kind of ready to go out of the gate. Lisa worked really hard to plow through a lot of material to organize that for teachers. And she used the MCAS questions from past years and the standards from the state as guidance in doing that. She actually taught science to every elementary student last year. And then this year we said, you know, you're the instructional technology coach. We love that you did that. And also the classroom teachers, they're ready to go. They were your co-teachers last year. We're gonna take the training wheels off. So the classroom teachers are teaching science. They still ask Lisa when they have questions. They reach out when they need support. We provide professional development when requested regarding this, but it's definitely a much more formalized program than it was even just a few years ago.
Great. And then there'll be some resources in the new Phelps School, is that right, as well, to support the teaching of the science classes?
Yes, so they'll, in more than one way. So the new Phelps includes 2 STEAM lab maker spaces. STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. I think I got them all. And we have teachers who will be staffing those spaces. That's one of the specials that the students move through over the course of the week. One of my favorite things that they do in there is engineering challenges, where the students are given a certain problem, and they have materials, and they literally are just, messing with the materials, trying to get it to work. An example would be, what's the best way? Let me show you how an elephant moves his trunk. And here's the elephant moving their trunk. Now, if you had this box of materials, what would you use to build an elephant trunk? So like really creative, interesting, age-appropriate stuff that still gets at engineering standards. So we're not like turning them into, mini physicists as 9-year-olds, but we're preparing the thoughtful foundation for it. So,
Great, thank you.
thanks.
Anyone else?
Just wanted to say thank you for the preparation that went behind this. I know all the data can be overwhelming, and, as you already stated, the past years are sort of, no way to have a baseline. So excited to see, hopefully, the fall of next year, winter next year, what the 2023 tests look like, and a little bit more of that comparison of apples to, I don't know what other
Hopefully
couple,
something
a
closer to
couple
an
of
apple,
apple
yeah.
types. Do we have, I believe one of the district goals is a 5 to 10% increase, so, hopefully we'll be hitting those.
We're aiming for it.
Yeah, so, for overachieving that, so, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I have one more question,
Go ahead.
if that's okay.
Please.
In the past, let's just say 2 years, have we had a significant number of students impacted by an inability to get a diploma based on MCAS results?
We have not.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely not, nor do we anticipate having one. In fact, we would do everything, of all the things that could preclude a student from earning a diploma with us, this would be one of the most foolish. They have many opportunities to retest, and we have many supports that we can put in place to ensure that they get there, even if they don't get there the first time.
Okay,
So the graph you're looking at there was first-time data. There's actually, I think, 3 retests a year, in addition to being able to take the regularly scheduled test if they need to. And like I said, we have specialized support for the students who need it.
great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Kidwell.
I have
Thank
a
you.
Oh, sorry, go
Question,
ahead.
regarding grades 5 and 6, obviously, the data shows that it's very low. It's not the best data, it's not the best results for grade 5 or grade 6 in numerous subjects, in my opinion. So what specifically is being done, I guess?
Right, so the biggest thing that we noticed about grade 5 was mathematics, and I've already spoken to what we're doing related to that. The next step with the math is going to be, we use Bridges pre-K to 5, we use a different program called Big Ideas in grades 6 through 8. So once we see students coming out of the Bridges years with more preparation, coming into 6 through 8, then it will be looking at whether or not Big Ideas is the best place for them to go in those grades, or whether we need a different program, or whether we need to just use the program we have differently. So when you're implementing new curriculum, it's really hard to imagine being a student who, the Bridges curriculum is substantially different from what we had used previously in math. Different ways of thinking and talking about mathematics. If you got that as a 5th grader and you hadn't had the early childhood, the 1st grade, the 2nd grade, the 3rd grade, the 4th grade foundation to that, and all of a sudden your teacher was using like, why don't we use the blah, blah, blah method? And you're like, I have no idea what that is, because we should have learned it in 3rd grade, but we just jumped right in with the 5th grade version, which is, it's a hiccup. Anytime you implement curriculum, you have to decide, are you gonna roll it up as the kids get there, or do you need to just go for it? We needed to just go for it. And I'm glad that we did, and I think we're seeing good results from it. But we're getting that little dip with the older kids as they move up. For ELA, Cheryl Shipper's team, along with Liam Griffin, who does the science and math, and then Melissa Glynn does the ELA and social studies. They spent a significant amount of their professional development time already this year analyzing the results, looking for specific, like down to the question, like questions that our kids struggled with, especially a question our kids struggled with that other kids across the state didn't struggle with. What do you think was the issue? What do we need to change in the way that we're teaching to make sure we're prepared for that? The last professional development day that they had, they divided into 2, their core teachers divided into 2 major groups. And Jackie Gervais and Nicole Moscone from the English department taught a workshop for ELA and social studies and anyone else who wanted to join on strategies to write in response to text using the RACE acronym. So it's restate, answer, cite, and explain. And they had a great slideshow. We then took that and made sure that the elementary was aware of using that acronym and using it the same way. And so now we're looking at that connection, and then the next step will be looking at the connection to high school, because the faculty who were in that really felt like that was a strategy that could improve students' success in responding to a prompt. And then the science and math teachers spent some time with 2 teachers from the special education department, specifically talking about the accommodations and supports that could make science and math more accessible to students with specific learning disabilities or on IEPs. So believe me, the middle school is very aware of their data, and if anything, analyzing it so deeply that some of the people are like, okay, that's enough data, please. But we've moved on to what pedagogy could make a difference. What gaps do we see based on last year? And how can we make sure those gaps don't happen again this year?
Right.
Doesn't mean there won't be something else that's a gap, but it's kind of the best we can do as far as ensuring that we're preparing students.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ms.
Thanks.
Kidwell. Have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, under new business, item C, bullying and restraint policy update. Dr. Cron.
Pass.
Welcome back, Ms. Kidwell.
We just need to go to the next slide, hopefully. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So we just finished a tiered focused monitoring review with DESE. This is when they come in once every 3 years or so to check our compliance with regulations and expectations that they have. Generally, the review with them was very positive. We'll be working through some of their recommendations over the course of the next year, and you'll probably hear from us again about steps that we're taking to comply with what they're requesting. But a relatively easy one that they've asked for is 2 quick updates to policy. Last June, I believe you all voted to accept some updates, updated MASC, Mass Association of School Committee language around policy that came with their legal guidance. But even since last June, there have been a couple of steps forward around inclusion and special education that they wanted us to include in our policy manual. So I'm hoping for either a first read or a vote to accept from you all tonight related to these 2 issues. The first one is our anti-bullying policy. They are very happy with the policy as it stands. They just wanted this one sentence added. So the sentence is, the school committee and principals recognize that certain students may be more vulnerable to becoming a target of bullying or harassment based on actual or perceived differentiating characteristics. Seems self-evident to a bullying policy, but they've asked us to explicitly include the sentence, and I think it's an accurate and reasonable ask. Would you like to see the second one, or would you like to undertake?
Yeah, we'll see it.
Okay. The second one is our restraint policy. This is a policy for situations that occur extremely rarely. This is if a student is being physically unsafe and we cannot calm that student or redirect that student in a way that makes the room a safer place to be. There can be some opportunity for the student to be separated from others in a safe place where they can't hurt themselves or others. Occasionally, a staff member has to put their hands on students to help with that calming process. Our staff members who do that have had explicit training, and we have 2 certified trainers on staff. We have a policy around this. Again, this is something that happens extremely rarely. They wanted, that DESE wanted us to include in compliance with our existing policy that we will formalize procedures around use of restraint, restraint prevention, and training for staff and behavior support. So for example, we use the Safety Care Restraint Program. We have trained staff across the district and certified trainers on staff. Each building has a student support team and a crisis team. Each building has a restraint data entry liaison, because of course, the state would want to know anytime this happens, because this is could be a volatile situation. And we have a data review structure, making sure that administrators and the leadership team review that data periodically. Family notification happens in compliance with required timelines through the main office, and the mode of communication to families is a call followed by in writing. So this one is really just, we have a policy, we have procedures to implement that policy, we have procedures to implement that policy. So those are the two changes that they've requested.
Great. Any questions? Does anybody object to taking a vote on this tonight? I know you said you'd hope to kind of get a vote on this tonight if possible. Any objections to that? Great. So we'll entertain a motion to approve the bullying and restraint policy update.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion
Second?
and a second. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you,
a
Ms.
great
Bidwell.
evening.
You too.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Next on tonight's agenda, item 7 is personnel information. Dr. Cron, do you have anything that you would like to highlight?
Nothing I would care to highlight, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, item 8 is our superintendent's report. Dr. Cron.
I just wanted to congratulate all of our fall athletes, and I think it was a great season, and congratulations to Dan Kimball. I think he's doing an outstanding job as a new AD. Case in point, we're now offering winter track as an additional sport this year, and 37 kids have signed up to participate, so I'm very pleased with that. I'd also like to just remind everyone that this Thursday at 1 p.m., Dr. Khalees Warnham will be addressing the faculty, and her talk is entitled Becoming a Culturally Proficient Educator. This talk really ties right in to the work that we need to do as a staff to work with our changing demographics and all of the challenges that brings with it. And I think as I've said before, our fundamental approach to this is knowing our students. You know, that is the goal, knowing who they are, where they're from, what their story is, and how that relates to your job as a teacher. And as you saw from the demographic changes that we're experiencing, this has very real ramifications for classroom teachers. So I'm looking forward to that Thursday, and you're all formally invited to attend. And finally, Jane and I had a great meeting with our Senator John Keenan last week to talk to him about a few things, namely the work that we're doing here in Rockland to offer free preschool to our town. And we've asked for some financial support from the state on that. Specifically, we asked them for $200,000 for this coming year and $200,000 for the following year to pilot implementing a new free preschool program for our kids. We also asked him a second thing, and that was to sponsor legislation that would allow full-day preschool to be reimbursed by the state. There's currently no mechanism in place for that, no way for them to reimburse the town for full-day preschool, and that's something that needs to be done through a legislative means. He was very positive with both of the things that we discussed with him, and I think we have an excellent advocate. So we're looking forward to that work as it hopefully bears some fruit in the coming months financially for us. So thank you to Senator Keenan for his time and willingness to work with us as usual. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Cron. Any questions for Dr. Cron?
I have a question. Did you discuss the rate increase for private education with Senator Keenan?
That was addressed. I addressed that with Senator Keenan and Representative DeCoste earlier in the month when that
Okay.
first came up. Yeah, I reached out to them directly on that issue separately. So
Okay.
they're aware of. I think they've probably heard from every superintendent in their district.
Anyone else? Okay, well, last but not least on our agenda is our public service announcements. We'll start out with our student representative, Ava. Do you have any questions or announcements for us?
I just have one announcement. The drama club has their fall play this Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. and it's midsummer.com.
Cool. What is midsummer.com?
I don't really know, but I'm excited to go see
I'll
it.
be looking forward to finding out. That'll be great. Mrs. Hennessy.
Not much. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving break. There is a half day coming up on Thursday, so don't forget about that. And that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson?
This Saturday, I believe the travel club is doing a Savers Drive of clothing. So if you're doing your winter clean out before the holiday, it's a good opportunity to just drop it off down at the middle school, high school area instead of driving to Hanover.
Thank you. Dr. Morrow Small.
I don't tend to keep up with all the sports, but I did see that the cheerleaders brought home the state championship again. I don't know how many years in a row it is. It seems like every year since I've lived in Rockland, so congratulations to them and all the other sports teams finishing up their seasons. And then just from the pediatrician, the flu is here. Please make sure you get your vaccines, and please stay home if you're sick, and wash your hands and all of that good stuff. If you are sick and are not feeling well, please seek medical care from your medical providers. But vaccines work and they save lives, so that's what I got.
Thank you. Just from me, I just want to thank the entire town of Rockland for helping me get squarely into the Christmas spirit this past Saturday. We had our annual Rockland Holiday Stroll, and I just want to once again acknowledge and thank Ms. Pam Murphy for all the work that she has done over the years organizing Christmas strolls. I don't know how she did it, but I think she did a really good job in ordering the best weather year that we've ever experienced in the stroll, which I think coincided with what I believe to be the best turnout, at least that I've ever seen at a Rockland Christmas stroll. For my part, at our Biggins North Pole down on South Union Street, I don't know how many hundreds of kids, smiling kids that we saw come through the door. I don't know how many organizations, businesses took part, but it was just vast and many. It really is the one night of the year, I think, the best night of the year to see what Rockland's all about. Families, friends, I mean, just what a quintessentially perfect Rockland night that was, and it made me feel good, as I always do, to be from this place. So thank you, Rockland, and we're looking forward to planning an even bigger and better holiday stroll for next year in 2023. With that, that's all I got, and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you very much. Have a great night.